Welcome to The Critique. Today's material takes a fascinating look at AI, treating it as a new medium, like the printing press, that's reshaping how we think and organize society. Let's dive right into strengthening this framework. So, the first point you make is really strong. AI isn't just another tool, it actually forms our habits. The idea, as I see it, is shifting focus from AI's results to how it fundamentally restructures the expert. We think you can sharpen this by really digging into the McLuhan idea of epistemic sensory distortion.
Yes, that's absolutely central. Right now, the analysis maybe leans a bit too heavily on the outcome, what AI achieves, automating legal work or medical diagnoses.
Right.
But it doesn't quite spell out how AI, as this new medium, enforces a different sensory balance, redefining what we even mean by judgment. You mentioned how experts used to rely on that ineffable tacit knowledge, right? That gut reaction.
Yeah, the audio-tactile stuff.
Exactly. Stuff print culture had already kind of pushed aside for linear text.
And the weakness, then, is that it doesn't fully bridge that to current AI, which is all about, holistic pattern matching.
Precisely. It doesn't explicitly show how that capability connects back to a new kind of sensory amputation for the person using it. It sees the result, but not the cognitive displacement mechanism itself.
Okay.
So the suggestion is to really pinpoint the cognitive habits AI favors and define them against media history.
Right.
So if print gave us that linear visual step-by-step approach,
One thing after another on the page?
yeah, then AI, with its massive data sets and instant pattern finding, it works more like a nonlinear visual quantification and tactility even, a kind of simultaneous field processing.
Ah. Tactility meaning the interaction of senses?
Yes, the whole sensory field working at once, which print kind of broke apart. And this new AI way actively pushes out the older, slower, word-based reasoning.
Okay, I see. So we're taking Susskind's quasi-judgment idea
Right.
and moving it from just a professional problem, like can an algorithm really judge, to something deeper, a medium theory thing about sensory experience.
Exactly. It becomes an imperative, dictated by the medium itself.
So then the question becomes, how do we make that mechanism, that tactile part, concrete for the reader?
Well, instead of just saying AI is getting better, we think you should weave in that concept of tactility, the simultaneous sensory input directly when you discuss expertise.
Okay.
Think about how AI coordinates human attention towards this emergent knowledge, what you've called a greater mind conceptually, and show how that process simultaneously forces the professional's own local embodied judgment. Well, it forces it to become just externalized data input.
Can you give a really solid example of that? Ground that idea of tactility?
Sure. Think about the classic financial auditor. Historically, their gut feeling or ability to smell a rat.
Right, the intuition.
It often came from being there, kicking the tires, watching body language, feeling the weight of the paper trail maybe, that very local, embodied tactile judgment.
Okay.
Now, AI systems crunch vast amounts of quantified data, spotting patterns way beyond human capacity. So the auditor's local feel gets sidelined. It's replaced by the machine's superior number crunching.
So the suggestion is the human expert effectively becomes a kind of specialized servo mechanism, feeding the machine, inputting data,
That's the core idea.
while the holistic, intuitive, sensory judgment part is amputated, taken over by the system?
Precisely. And framing it that way really strengthens your core argument. It shows the mechanism of the cognitive shift, you see, not just the economic fallout. It's a sensory trade-off.
That's a much sharper angle. Okay, let's shift gears to the institutional side. Regulation, government response. The material rightly flags the sort of tunnel vision on GNI and automation.
Yeah, it does that well.
To really elevate this section, we think you should frame these governance debates less as simple policy failures and more as an inevitable cultural clash.
Ah, a clash between what?
Between the dominant typographic mind, shaped by print.
A linear, segmented.
Exactly. And the simultaneity, the all-at-onceness, demanded by this new electric AI medium,
Right. As it's written now, you critique governments for being stuck on automation and task substitution, regulating too narrowly, just focusing on, say, chatbots.
Yeah.
You diagnose that conservatism, but the underlying reason, this fundamental mismatch between linear thinking and nonlinear threats, it's kind of implied, but not fully leveraged to boost the McLuhan parallel.
It's like the mind shaped by the sequential page just can't grasp the holistic, simultaneous field of interconnected AI systems. It's like a legacy OS trying to run software from the future.
That's a great way to put it. The weakness is that you haven't fully weaponized that media history point to explain why regulation is failing.
Okay.
We need to position the risk management failure clearly as a direct result of that historical segmentation that print culture baked into our institutions. The typographic man is wired to see problems linearly. A causes B causes C.
Right.
Cause and effect.
Which makes it incredibly hard to get your head around the cumulative effect of numerous innovations, all happening at once.
Or the risk of a sudden, nonlinear leap in capability, like the AGI concerns you touch on.
So regulating only the latest thing, like Gen AI, is basically technological myopia? A linear response to a field problem.
Exactly. The regulatory mind is stuck in a kind of 19th century cause and effect model, while the technology is operating in a 21st century simultaneous field.
Okay, so how does that translate into actionable advice? What's the suggestion derived from medium theory?
Well, you should contrast that typical legacy-based inquiry. The question that always sounds like, what's the future of the lawyer or doctor or whatever, which assumes simple automation.
Right, replacing tasks.
Contrast that with the need for vision-based restructuring, something that embraces radical change, even elimination of old roles, not just automating them.
And what does that look like for regulators specifically? A concrete example of a non-linear approach.
The actionable idea here is shifting focus. Move away from trying to control specific inputs and outputs. That's the old linear model.
Like regulating chatbot outputs?
Yeah. Instead, focus on anticipating and managing the systemic change of process itself, and propose that the only way to really grapple with these simultaneous nonlinear effects is through a kind of pluralism of centers.
Pluralism of centers. What do you mean by that exactly? Multiple watchdogs?
Sort of. It means moving away from the single visual top-down chain of command, the classic print-era bureaucracy.
Okay.
Because a simultaneous medium needs a system where multiple independent points of awareness and regulation operate concurrently. They track effects across the field, rather than relying on one committee or one agency trying to see the whole picture, which is impossible in a simultaneous environment.
I see. So media theory isn't just analysis, it actually suggests a different structure for governance.
Precisely. It offers direct operational advice. That makes the argument much more potent.
That definitely sharpens the regulatory critique. Okay, let's turn inward now. The human experience, the phenomenology of living inside this AI-mediated world. You draw on sources like Waking Life, which is great. To really maximize that insight, the material should explicitly bring in McLuhan's ideas of technological amputation and the Narcissus effect.
Right. To explain what it feels like living with these ambient AI partners.
Exactly.
The material already suggests AI environments scaffold identity and alter self-reflection. That's a good start. But it kind of misses the chance to use the specific psychological mechanism from media theory here. The idea that when you externalize a function, your memory, your decision-making,
You offload it to the tech.
yeah, it acts like a counter-irritant to your nervous system.
That's the amputation concept, right? We extend a part of ourselves, like memory or judgment.
And then we become numb to that extension. We get fascinated by the reflection, the output.
The Narcissus effect, falling in love with our own extended image.
Exactly. And that leads to this profound self-obfuscation. The user risks becoming just a servo mechanism to their own technological extension. It's that adormecimiento subliminat idea, falling into a kind of subliminal sleep regarding our technologically reflected selves.
That idea of efficiency creating cognitive numbness is really key, isn't it? We use the AI prosthetic, we get the outcome, faster, easier.
Yeah, it feels good. Efficient.
But in doing so, we kind of fall asleep to the actual process, the internal work that used to define our agency, our judgment.
How should the listener weave that psychological angle into the discussion of professional work?
Well, you should explicitly frame the AI user's experience as the slide into subliminal sleep. Make the argument that when judgment, decision-making, pattern-finding are externalized, farmed out to the greater mind.
The AI system.
Right. The efficiency gained comes at a cost. It creates a numbness that disconnects the user from recognizing the intrinsically valuable parts of their work, the meaningful bits, the ethical considerations.
Leaving only the instrumental value? Getting the job done? Hitting the target?
Exactly. The goal becomes just the outcome dictated by the system. And that internal, meaningful, ethical sense of wanting gets eroded by the sheer efficiency of the tool. It risks turning the professional into a very sophisticated functionary focused only on measurable results.
That's the identity crisis you need to explore. So give us a concrete link. How can we connect the tech itself to this compromised agency?
Well, you mentioned haptic technology, where the user feels simulated weight. It feels real.
Yeah, but the tech making it happen is sort of invisible, lost on them.
Exactly. You can use that subtle displacement as an analogy for using generative AI constantly. Connect that feeling to, well, use the fragility of consciousness idea. John Searle's point about IBM's Watson winning Jeopardy, Watson doesn't know that it won.
Okay, use that as a mirror.
Yes, a mirror to examine the human user's own potentially compromised agency. If the machine achieves the outcome without consciousness, what does that say about the human who has delegated their conscious judgment to the machine?
So the material should pose the question directly. How does the AI user, totally focused on the instrumental outcome provided by their AI prosthetic, how do they maintain the difference between their own genuine, intrinsic wanting and the goal that's just prescribed by the system they're now serving?
Asking that question really pushes the critique beyond just professional competence. It becomes an identity crisis rooted in this sensory and psychological displacement. That's where the real depth from sources like Waking Life can come through.
This has been a really productive dive into an already impressive piece of work. So, just to recap, we've pinpointed 3 key areas for sharpening the critique. First, really integrating the sensory and tactile elements into the definition of professional judgment, moving beyond outcomes to diagnose that cognitive sensory distortion.
Right. Showing the mechanism. Second, using that cultural clash idea, the print mind versus the electric field, to explain why regulations seem so stuck, and suggesting a shift towards that vision-based restructuring and pluralism of centers, not just tinkering with automation rules.
And finally, really deploying the psychological tools from media theory, technological amputation, the narcissist effect, that subliminal sleep, to diagnose the internal, often unconscious, effects of living with ambient AI, what it does to our sense of self and agency.
Exactly. By making those connections much more explicit, really operationalizing the medium theory throughout, the material shifts from just describing a transition to offering a really incisive diagnosis of how AI, as its powerful new medium, is actively remapping us, ourselves, our institutions.
We strongly encourage you to integrate these suggestions. They should really amplify the impact of your argument. Please feel free to submit the revised work back to us for another look.